I'm here all night.
Yeah, me too. We might as well just have a mad banter. We've got a couple of shorts that just kind of touch on what we're talking about anyways. We might as well just do it. You know what I mean? Pog and Android
Might as
doing a
well.
mad banter. I'll probably just post it on my channel though. You know what I mean?
That's
Like,
fine.
but yeah, just a little. But yeah, that's what I'm actually saying is that I think that's what I think. Like, I think guys like Kendrick, for instance, will eventually get the offer. You know what I mean?
Oh, I
And
think I think Kendrick, just as an example, already has personally. I think right now what we're seeing is a lot of the Hollywood stars are receiving, how should I put this without coming across like I'm blaspheming? Because I'm not trying to. They're reaping what they've sowed, finally. You know what I mean? And
mhm.
I think in a lot of cases that means that these people are being full on swapped out. Like the for example, like just like I guess to clarify, I don't think that the Kendrick Lamar that we see now is the original Kendrick Lamar. I think a lot of these people are clones or just have been and that's just like an adaptation of thinking. I don't know what the real answer is, whether they're the reptilian fucking shapeshifters or whatever. Some of them might be. I don't know. Or if they're all just robots or clones or whatever. It doesn't matter to me what the actuality of it is in that sense. It's just that it's like, yeah, the real Kendrick Lamar is dead though.
Well, I mean,
You know?
possibly, and what I'm kind of thinking also is that like I said, they have their publicist. That's a good way of looking at it, right? You have a publicist when you become famous,
Yeah, and
when
we
you
won't
finally hit it
say
big.
what kind of people that these publicists are,
Well, but
these
what
agents.
it's like I'm saying, like, I think your publicist handles a lot of your business in the beginning, like the aesthetic of your show is going to be like, what you're going to wear on the red carpet, this and that. And then eventually some of these people, and it could be because they are clones, right? It could be because they are clones. And if that's the case, if they are clones, if they've been if the original has been taken out, think like the Avril Lavigne theory, right? That's not even really Avril
Mhm.
Lavigne anymore. That's some other
Yeah, Paul
girl.
McCartney.
Yeah, that it's Paul McCartney or just some other girl that they call Melissa, I think is what they said. But the idea is that when she became Melissa, her whole aesthetic changed, right? So the theory could
Right.
be that once these people grow up in enough popularity and they want to start showing who they really are, that's when you see their style change. Because they're no longer letting their publicists decide what their shows are going to look like, what they're going to wear on these carpets. They're really showing who they are now. They're expressing who they really are, type of thing. But it could also be
Right.
because they are clones, and the clones are tired of being somebody else. They want to just
Right.
be them now, type of thing, So
Yeah.
that both, either way, both statements can be true to an extent, because
Right.
something eventually happens to famous people where it almost feels like they just stop caring. You know what I mean? They're done always
Mhm.
looking bright and beautiful all the time. Anyways, Ariana Grande is a fine example of that, because even though she still comes out like wearing Dolce Gabbana or whatever it is, you know what I'm saying? She looks like she's about to go out back and fight He-Man here in a minute.
Well, that's more interconnected to like a short supply of the adrenochrome right now, because the reason why so many of these people were just suddenly coming out of the woodwork, like Madonna, for example, who went from looking like the Baba Yaga to the Good Witch of the North or something, you know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like she straight up. she's slowly starting to show her age again because
See, I pee on
um
Madonna, man. I do what I wanna.
yeah, no kidding, man. This one's gonna get us flagged for sure, but it's like, you know, the with there being a mass deportation initiative, something that people don't really want to talk about with that is that it's like, yeah, maybe there could be um better regulations for some of that. I don't really know exactly, but the thing is that um a lot of the immigrants that were coming into the country were being aided by people, and not in every case, but people such as the cartel, which is kind of promoting human trafficking. you know and children are just being shipped into the United States by the shipping container, and they are just being taken like cattle to be harvested for adrenochrome so that the Baba Yaga can be the good witch of the north again or something, you know so it's this crazy thing that's happening. And that's kind of what is happening to Ariana Grande right now. She's on short supply of, it's the movie Monsters Inc. Like,
What?
sadly, strangely enough,
Yeah,
it's
I
the
mean,
movie
because
Monsters Inc.
it feeds it feeds the monkey, man. They
Yeah.
like I talked about this a while back when I was talking about corporal punishment in the United States, right? When did it become like inhumane to uh execute the prisoner? Right? When did people start acting like it was inhumane? When did it become like a popular thing? Right? Because the thing here, and I truly believe it's a worldwide phenomena, right? But how does anything take off? Like, how does any opinion, how does any movement, how does any thought really like gain its ground, except through becoming a fad? Like, most things just become a
Mm,
fad. We turn them into a fad so people will want to support it more, the idea of it more, right? So that is something that, for a fine example of that is the idea of, and this is going to be a real roundabout way of explaining it, but AD and BC, right? Now people want to
right.
say BCE instead of BC, and like
Hmm.
AD something or other. And the reason for that is because they don't like they say that it's because it's more correct towards blah blah blah. They give you this word salad about it, and we can look it up and find what it's, or you can just go to the Metatron's channel on YouTube, and he explains it. He does it way better than I could ever give it justice, you know. But really, at the end of the day, it's because of before Christ, after death. What most people relate
Right.
BC and AD to. So there's this whole thing about, Christianity bad. You know what I mean? Everything else good. Type of thing, right? Christians are fascists and blah blah blah. Which there have been a lot of Christian fascists in history,
Yeah.
along
There.
with
Yeah. It's
everybody
not that
else. I
Christians
mean, yeah.
can't be fascist.
Yeah, like everybody else has been like, name one culture, name one society, name one religion that hasn't had some kind of fascism in it. I mean, Into the West has a fascist propaganda connotation to it. The fact that the end of it is basically stating life is miserable, deal with it, right? And that is kind of like a religious text within Buddhism, right? And the reason for that is because people were starving at that time. So what gives you hope? It's like the Bible. Can you imagine if the Bible said, "Yeah, you're gonna, if you're starving, well, life is tough. Deal with it." Then Christians would do that, wouldn't they? You know, it's that similar aspect.
Yeah.
Like it's a type of fascism.
Yeah.
So instead of trying to give people hope and teach them how to think for themselves in that sense into the West, they just teach you at the end of it, well, yeah, I mean, life is miserable. Deal with it. You know, starve. That is the path to enlightenment. And that you know, and that's a type of fascism in a sense, right? So
it can be depending on how it's wielded.
Yeah. So, you know, Christianity bad, this good, whatever, you know. Well, so there is this sinister plot, you know, to get rid of Christianity. Now it's become a fad now to dislike Christianity. But just a few decades ago, in the 70s, there was a boom in Christianity. Lots of people were going to church, and it wasn't even so much that they were like true believers or anything like that. It wasn't like everybody was just like Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life or anything like that. It was just a fad. They just, for whatever reason, it was a fad at that time, and I don't really know why it was beneficial to do so, for the government to make it a fad, for the media to make it a fad, but they needed it to be a fad all the same, so they made it a fad. And
Vietnam.
Yeah, and then people, once it quit being a fad, people dropped off, you know. Well, a similar aspect to that can be given to corporal punishment. It's a fad now to think, well, we shouldn't execute people because that's inhumane, right? That's inhumane. Well, why? What does that benefit the government? And so you get to thinking about it, and it's like, until you realize that prisons, in a sense, are mini businesses. They are corporatized. They do have boards, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And this and that. Well, how does a prison make money? You know, because it doesn't offer anything except what? Cheap labor. And they are subsidized by the
mob operates from the inside.
They're subsidized by the federal government too. The more head of cattle you have within your walls, the more government money you get, which means the government taxes the American working class for this money. You see what I'm saying? There is some mob involvement, yeah, because it's a racket. You see what I'm saying? Well, you're not going to do that if you start executing actual criminals for the criminalistic things that they do. So they need to turn it into a fad for people to become empathetic. It's like that song by Stained, the Pay to Play the Game, right? Did you ever hear that song by Stained back in the day? What you pay to play the game, or pay to play the game, or something? It was something like that. But I do remember one of the lyrics in that song. He says, "Empathy, the chosen way to be." He's basically talking about how empathy is a fad, and the more you take, the more you beg. What you pay to play the game. You see what I'm saying? So you think about that in that sense, right? And this is the guy who wrote, and this is the band that wrote Mud Shovel. And we know what that song's about. You see what I'm saying? So, I mean, you think about that for a minute. That dude, Aaron Lewis, went through some kind of awakening at some point. You know what I mean? And just realized what was going on. Well, this all goes to the fad of adrenochrome, right? Because they don't say adrenochrome, right? They call it Ozempic, which...
Ozempic and adrenochrome are not the
same thing. Exactly.
Just to clarify, it's just an excuse.
It's exactly. D takes Ozempic.
Right.
I can promise you, it does not do what the famous people are on TV saying it does. Yeah. It does help. It is a diabetic medication, and that's really just it. That's just really it. It's not going to do that. So you talk about where they're getting the adrenochrome from. Well, what is a fad right now, if not, and this may get us flagged, but I'm just going to talk about it, pro-choice. Why is it so
Well,
important? Why is pro-choice so important? Not for regular people, because again, we've already stated that regular people can be swayed into anything if you make it a fad. Again, right now we're living in a time where Christianity bad, everything else good. But in the 70s, Christianity was good and it was a fad. That is
right.
verifiable. Look it up. You know what I mean? Like, go to the 70s and look at the propaganda written behind being a Christian, and you'll see how many people were that Christianity boomed in the 70s, and it's because it was made a fad. Why is it? So I'm not talking about people necessarily. I'm talking about the federal government. Why is it pushing for abortion so heavily? You know, and why is
Well,
Hollywood
and
pushing for it so heavily? If not for what, adrenochrome?
well,
They
that's a big part of it too. And if you ask them, what's funny, and this is, I'm gonna say this, and it's obvious, it's kind of hilarious because they give this answer as if it's that much better, that this is the source. But if you ask them where they source it, they say nothing about abortion. They try to avoid that as much as possible. The answer that is given is circumcision foreskin, as if that's better. As if that's much better. You know what I mean? Like, so
well,
you're keeping the foreskin of circumcised babies and you're using it to put the blood into your face
well,
for
yeah,
stem
yeah,
cells.
to
You
dance,
know, like
to bathe in
let's
it like you're
really.
Elizabeth Bathory or something. Yeah.
Exactly, dude. Like, exactly. And I know that the way that I'm framing it makes it sound absurd, but I mean, why
It's
do I
not that absurd,
why
though.
is it
It's not
that,
that absurd. It
the
is an
framing
archaic
makes it sound
practice.
absurd, rather than the action itself,
There, you have Elizabeth Bathory, you have the guy that helped Joan of Arc. I can't remember his name now because it's really freaking French, right? And you have the Count of Germont, right?
Right.
All three are cases of people practicing basically what you just said, only on like living people. Uh, Not just their foreskin, but living people, virgins. You know what I mean? Because of
Oh
the
yeah.
because of the theory about the blood is life. If you look at like old Hebrew and
Entity and the womb,
the
and divine
Levitical, and
feminine.
your blood is your life type of thing. And the purer the blood, the less untouched it is, and what is more untouched than virgin blood? You know, something that hasn't been invaded, for instance, because a lot of it is in those stories were virgin women, young girls, not even men. This isn't even a so congratulations, feminists, that it wasn't men. You know what I'm saying? Like, this was a hardship that women had to go through. Like, you know, uh, a legitimate
Right.
thing that sucks. It would have sucked at that time to be a woman with powerful, influential people like that living around you. That would suck. Uh,
Right.
I yeah, I just the blood. If you're following that kind of archaic practice and belief, about the blood being pure and the purer the blood, well, then and that's the weird thing about that is the fact that a lot of people complain about losing their foreskin these days. They're talking about
I know.
foreskins, but
And that's insanity.
people complain about it, and I'm like, well, I mean, regardless of that, like, okay, so you don't like the fact that your foreskin's been cut off.
Yeah.
Okay, that
And
teach their own, I guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, and I say that's insanity, and let me clarify that that's not necessarily because of the whole idea of it being a signifier of, a covenant with God, this and that. Like, I understand that we don't necessarily have to do that, per se. Like, I understand the idea that if you're going to keep the Mosaic law, you just, well, keep them all, da da da. Um, I am purely being an asshole. Why? Why would you want that in its totality? Like, it's just very unesthetically appealing. I would be even more horrified every time I had to pull it out. If I had to look at that thing.
Your half-hooded warrior, as it were.
No,
Yeah,
my whole hooded warrior,
your
man.
whole,
Yeah,
yeah.
the whole hooded warrior would be like, why?
I don't know, but oh man, and I don't know to the validity of how true this is, but it was supposedly a pretty close to true story that I think the History Channel, or maybe it was A&E back before like A&E had like The Walking Dead and Breaking Bad, so they did more artsy style stuff once upon a time, you know? Because A&E, I think, stands for Arts and Entertainment, right? So they started off as a real artsy kind of channel to begin with, right? And then they started moving into like the heavier stuff because they blew up with The Walking Dead and Breaking Bad, and now they're just trying to find that next thing. And A&E, I hate to tell you this, but it ain't gonna happen with the Vampire Chronicles. It's not. It's not. It's just not.
Right.
Like nobody's watching the second season. I didn't make it past the first episode of season 1, and you're as much in denial as Amazon is about Rings of Power right now. I'm telling you, you just are. Go quit. There was no reason to even set up for a season 3 because nobody's gonna watch that. Just like nobody's watching Rings of Power over at Amazon. You're just spending money. There's an expression, you cut off your own nose to spite your face. Well, you're missing a nose, 2 eyes, and 1 ear at this point. You know what I mean? So, but anyways, A&E did do a movie back in the day, though, and I think it was A&E, about Helena the Great of Russia. I think her name was Helena. I want to say her name was Helena the Great, and she's famously known for uniting the Cossacks under Russia's banner. The Cossacks were kind of like a warrior caste, and they were pretty wild. It would have been like think the Sumerians, for instance, Conan the Barbarian type folk, the Sumerians getting united under somebody's banner to fight for them, that's what she's famously known for. She's also famously known for dying underneath a horse. And that's a pretty raunchy story, but let's to put it politely, she had a horse fashioned to a pulley system to be able to be raised up and then lowered down, and the pulley broke and the horse fell and crushed her. And they say, oh, that's just a rap battle. Epic Rap Battles of History famously had a whole thing where they did a rap of her and they said something about the horse, and she said, the lady who was doing the rap for her said, that's just a myth perpetuated by such and such. And it's like, no, it's not. Not even close. That actually happened. And Epic Rap Battles, come on, man, come on. Come on. Anyways, though, like, you guys do really good and then you do really bad on some things, like, I don't get it. But and I know that's dated because I think they're still around. I don't know. But The thing is that this Helena, though, bringing it back to the original point that I was going to make, she what was not born royal. She married into royalty, right? And the guy she married, the king or whatever, the prince or whatever, he became king while she was married to him, which made her queen. And he could not facilitate her in the way of a husband and wife. And they figured it out because he needed to be he had his foreskin. He would get sick a whole lot and things like that. And then they got him really drunk one night and they circumcised him. And after that, he was like a raging bull, apparently. Now, that's in that movie. It had Catherine Zeta-Jones and Gimli. John Rhys Davies, if I'm not mistaken, is actually in that. Oddly enough, yeah, he plays one of the Cossacks, if I'm not mistaken. But it was a movie with Catherine Zeta-Jones or Catherine Zeta-Douglas, whatever, playing Helena, and John Rhys Davies playing a Cossack and whatnot. And yeah, and I guess if you're into the Days of Our Lives, which I know you're probably not, but anybody out there, if you're into Days of Our Lives or are aware that there is, yes, a show like Sands to the Hourglass, so are the Days of Our Lives. There's a character on that show named Sammy, and the girl who plays Sammy, the actress who plays Sammy, I don't know her name, she's in that too. She eventually becomes the king's mistress after the king gets circumcised, so go figure, right? But yeah, so there are health benefits to circumcision too. You know, there are health benefits to circumcision as well. So, you know, I mean, to each their own. You want to keep it. But there are health benefits to it that are medically proven. You know, and so it's just weird to me that that's the hill they're willing to live and die on when it comes to their vampiric blood. You know, like, they get it from the foreskin. That in of its own right, there's a fad about that as well. Like, you know, I won't say that it's a growing fad. Like, most people are.
Well, I mean, you know, if I had to do it as an adult, I probably wouldn't, you know?
Oh, no. Yeah, like, there's no way. There is no freaking way. It just is what it is at that point. There comes to an age where it's like, yeah, if you don't get your tonsils taken out, you're going to die. Well, then just shoot me up full of morphine and, you know, give me my last rites, because I'm not, you know what I'm saying? I'm not doing this now, you know? Like, because, you know, like, the older you get, the more dangerous getting your tonsils taken out becomes, right? Yeah, like, nah. Sure. Yeah, like, it's a similar thing. Like, I think the only thing that you can always get removed from you, that no matter what age you are, well, I say that, but I imagine, like, if you were 80 years old or something, this would still be pretty dangerous. But, like, yeah. I think you can have your appendix removed at just about any age without being worried about, like, the repercussions of it, because it's pretty much, like, useless from what I understand about it.
Yeah, and it's like one of those procedural, you know, like, whatever, that it's procedure, you know, it's a procedure, surgery, whatever. It's very easy to perform. However, if you're elderly, I mean, being cut into as an elderly person is never ideal, I'm sure.
We have a mutual friend whose name I won't mention, but I knew them in high school, and you know, I went to high school with them, and you know her too, but they were a nurse at a nursing home, or a CNA at a nursing home, which is just like an assistant, you know. And they were freaking out one day after coming home from work because they were talking about how there was an elderly lady there with skin so thin, like I guess you can hit a certain age and your skin can do this thing where it becomes like pretty much like paper, you know?
Ooh, yeah.
And she accidentally, like, she was trying to help her onto her bed and her hand slipped or something and she accidentally pierced her arm with her thumb.
Oh.
Her whole thumb, like we're talking like cabin fever, you know, the misfire, you know what I'm saying, type of thing. And she was freaking out. She's like, I'm in so much trouble, I just know it. And I'm like, well, I mean, you might be, but I mean, you know, was it bad? I mean, like, it sounds bad, like that sounds terrible, you know. But yeah, apparently that happened, and I don't know what became of that, so I can't contest. I think, well, they probably did get fired now that I'm thinking about it, because it seems to me like shortly after that they didn't have a job, but you know, which is probably for the best, but I mean, you know. So yeah, I imagine when you become elderly, you know, getting, you know, and you got skin like that, getting your appendix removed is probably a pretty hardcore thing, you know. I can't imagine that would be fun at all for anybody involved. You know, you're probably going in pretty nervous, and who's ever doing the procedure is probably pretty nervous about the whole thing. If I had to guess. But what does an appendix do, anyways? Like, I don't even know what an appendix is supposed to do. Like, they say it's useless, right? But to what point? At what point does it stop being useful?
You know, you got me. I don't know.
Yeah. Like, I have no prior knowledge of an appendix. It's never been that important to me. I still have my appendix. You know, so it's not like, what does an appendix do? Let's find out. The appendix is a small finger-shaped organ located at the junction of the large and small intestines. Its exact function is still debated, but recent research suggests that it may play a role in the immune system. Oh. So, how recent is this event? Well, okay. The headline for that, what I just read, if I'm looking at this correctly, was in 2017. So it says it's but recent research. So 2017 research, I guess. Right? So it's not that recent, but it took until 2017 for them to figure it. So what? We just didn't know what it did until then? Is that what I'm to understand? Like, we've just had this finger-shaped organ inside of us that we had no exact idea of what its function is.
It's the organ that specifically fights AIDS.
Oh man, you know, I remember when our brother's appendix exploded, right?
Yes, AIDS.
Dude, it was I mean, like, I don't want to like upset anybody, but like it's kind of a funny story. It kind of really is a funny story because like he was hurting. Like, apparently it hurts. It hurts like an SOB, right?
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
And he was and man, like, I was just little too. Like, I had to have been like 9 or 10 or something like that. Like, I was just a little guy, you know, and he's 7 years older than I am, you know what I mean? Considerably older than you are, right? So, like, if I was 10, he'd have been like 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, something like that. You know, so I want to say I was even younger than that, you know, because I think he was a relatively little guy too. You know what I mean? But I mean, he might have been 17 when this happened. I don't know. We'd have to ask him, but I know he was still in school because he was supposed to be getting up and getting ready for school, and he's just in pain. He's crying. He's talking about his stomach hurts or something and how much it hurts. And Dad is just like, oh, just, you know, get up and, you know, come on, stop, because
Walk it off.
well, because I mean, like anything, you know, any little excuse to get out of school, and dad just
Yeah,
you know,
I mean,
like,
kids are like that, man.
yeah,
I
exactly.
get
And
it.
dad was just like, just get up, you know, walk it off type of thing, you know, like, he's like, no, my stomach hurts. And he's like, well, did you go to the bathroom, drink some Pepto, do something, you know what I mean? But you're going to school, you know? And you know how dad was, you know, I don't pay taxes, so you don't go to school, you know? We got free
Right.
education in this country. We're going to use it, you know? And in those days, the the decline of education was still pretty evident, but it wasn't where it is now, you know? So, so dad was still advocating for public schools and not homeschooling type of thing, you know? And, but, you know, our brother, he's just freaking out. You know, Geese is just freaking out. Not, you know, he's just crying and crying. He's like, I need to go to the hospital. I think I need to go to the hospital. And, you know, one of the things is, and it's funny because I didn't even know this was true, but just a few weeks before, Geese thought he had breast cancer. And I should not be putting him on blast like this, but I mean, he did. Like, he was freaking out, and I was like, I thought that was only something women get. And, you know, Ma was just like, no, men can get it too. And Geese swore up and down that he had breast. So, like, he would do a lot of hypochondriac stuff anyways. So it's kind of understandable that dad was just like, it's gas, you know, or it's something you ate. But he's crying so hard and everything that dad finally was like, all right, fine. So he calls the doctor, hears about the symptoms, and dad's like, oh, okay then. So he hangs up the phone and he doesn't say a word. He gets dressed, takes Geese to the hospital. Turns out his appendix exploded. And I still remember dad sitting there in the hospital, you know, just kind of giggling. And everybody's like, well, what's so funny? He goes, oh, it's just, I guess something really was wrong, you know? Like, you know, he's like, it's a good thing he didn't give up, you know? It's a good thing he got me to bring him here, because that could have been really bad, you know, type of thing. Because it wasn't too often that, you know, that Geese was right. You know what I'm saying? It was always, you know, I think I got breast cancer. That's not breast cancer. That's, you know what I mean? Like, types of stuff. So, you know, his appendix exploded, and you know, that's the only experience I've ever had with something like that. And I just, beyond that, I have no idea. I've heard that it's a useless organ, and I'm just curious, like, is it useless? I guess it's useless because we don't know what it does.
Someone does.
Yeah. I mean, it
I don't
says
believe that.
that it may play a role in the immune system.
Yeah, it's the one that specifically fights AIDS.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you this right now. When I had diverticulitis the first time, that's what we thought had happened. We thought my appendix had exploded. And I was really disappointed in that, because I still got my appendix, my tonsils, you know what I'm saying? I still got all my original working parts.
Yeah.
You know? So I was kind of disappointed, like, man. You know? I'm kind of going for the high record, you know? Like, I'd like to go out the way that I came in, you know what I mean? With all my teeth, with my appendix, with my, you know, my tonsils, all of that. I'd like to go out the way that I came in. Well, I guess I didn't come in with my teeth, though. But whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's the appendix story right there. Dad was just like, oh, would you stop? And he's like, no, something's really wrong. I need to go to the hospital. Oh, for crying out loud. All right, fine. Then he gets on the phone, and you could just see the difference in his personality after that too, because he told them what was going on, and they were like, I bet you what they told him was, it sounds like he might have appendicitis. You might want to get him in here real quick. And he was just like, oh, okay then.
Sounds like he's dying.
Yeah, he may die. You need to take this seriously. Oh, okay. Okay then. You know. That was just dad though. Like, you know, like that was just dad. That was just the way.
Yeah.
You know, I almost got kidnapped at a rest stop.
Nice.
Did I ever tell you about that?
Not that I remember.
You were I don't know if you were born yet or not, if I'm being
Probably
honest.
Not.
But I know our sister was, right? But I don't know if you were born yet. If you were still real little. And it was the first time we went up to Washington to visit our uncle and his ex-wife. I mean, I don't know what else to call her, you know, but and their family, right? And on the way there, we stopped at a rest stop, and I remember walking over to the bathroom to go to the bathroom too, and seeing this like weird dude, and he was shaped like an egg. You know what I'm talking about? Like,
yeah,
he was shaped like Grimace from McDonald's, only he had like this egg-shaped head too, and he wore these like those thick glasses, you know. And I remember him like staring at me with his mouth open, like he doesn't breathe out of his nose or something, like he's a real mouth breather. And I just remember looking at him thinking, oh man, you know, like, that sucks to be you. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, boy, I'm going to jog or something. I'm going to stay in shape because I don't want to look like this guy, you know? And it never dawned on me that the dude just like was just like dead ass locked on me. You know, he was locked in.
right.
That just never even occurred to me. And I went up into the bathroom and stuff, and I wasn't like little at that time either, right? So when I say I almost got kidnapped, this dude was, even though he was shaped like that and everything, he was considerably bigger than me too. You know what I'm saying? Like, I remember thinking to myself that I was going to have to fight. You know, that I'm about to try and throw down on this guy, but there's a good chance he's going to overpower me. You know what I mean? And I'm going to have to work real hard not to get taken to the ground. Because if I get taken to the ground and he puts all his weight on me, I'm pinned. I'm not getting out of this. But what happened was I go up in there and I start going to the bathroom. And I'm just peeing. And he comes bursting in there. Right? Just comes bursting in there, like almost kicking the door open into the place, right? Comes bursting in there. And luckily I had just got done peeing, so I was like zipping up or whatever. You know, I wasn't like just hanging out in all my glory or anything like that. But like he's just staring at me with his mouth still open, and I just like turn and I look at him. And then he starts to walk towards me, and that's when I had the thought, okay, oh man, no. Oh, this dude's gonna try and take me, you know, or something. And so like, and I was like 15 years old, you know, so, and I wasn't a slouch by any means. I wasn't like bad Leroy Brown. I wasn't the toughest guy around or anything like that. Like, you know, but I'd been in enough fights that I knew how to throw down. And so I came up with the idea that I was going to get my back against the wall and I was just going to start hitting this dude and just trying to, you know, like punch him in the throat or like palm strike him in the nose or something, you know what I mean? But he ain't just taking me easy, you know? But as he like made his like first step towards me, Dad and our brother come walking in. and they're laughing and talking about something, and the dude, like, he looks startled and moves out of the way, and Dad and our brother aren't even paying attention to him. They're like talking to one another, just walking and laughing, and he looks over at me one more time, and then he darts out the door, and I yelled at Dad. I was like, that dude just tried to kidnap me. Dad stops and looks at me and goes, what? I said, that guy you just walked by, he just tried to kidnap me. He came in here with every intent, and I told him what happened, and I should have just been like, go get him. You know, I shouldn't have taken the time to explain, because in the time it took me to explain to the time for Dad to react and go out there to go and bounce his head off the ground, the guy was already gone. And then Dad walks back in, he's kind of chuckling, and he goes, you sure you were going to get taken? I'm like, Dad, I'm telling you, this guy was looking at me like I was a T-bone steak. You know what I mean? Like he was getting ready to suck the bone. You know what I mean? Like I was in some trouble. And and so after that, Dad just kept cracking jokes. Like I'd get out to go to the bathroom at like a gas station. He'd be like, you need me to accompany you to make sure you don't get taken? I'm like, I'll be fine. He goes, are you sure? Because we don't know. The guy could be following us. He might, you know, he might think your choice. Right. You know, he might think your choice meat. He might. And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. So we, you know, he's cracking jokes like that the whole time. And, you know, Ma, she's talking to Pop, and she's telling him that's not funny, you know, like he could be really traumatized. And he's like, you're not traumatized, are you? And I was like, I mean, I'm not traumatized, but it was pretty scary. You know, I'm definitely lucky, I guess. You know, I mean, I was going to hit the guy. And Pop looks at Mom and goes, see, he was going to take him out. It'd have been fine. You know, like he'd have taken him. Right. You know, so like we get, you know, and you get, you know, it sounds like a really hardcore story, but like you got to remember too, the generation these two grew up in. You know what I mean? Like, right. And yeah, they were coming, like they were born in like the 50s and stuff. Like they weren't too far removed away from like world. No, I think that even before then, because I think they were like around for World War II even, or like towards the tail end of it or whatever, but they lived through like Vietnam and all sorts of stuff. So like, you know, they lived through some hard times, you know? And so, you know, it's just that generation's way of doing things. So we're in Seattle and we go to the Space Needle. And I'm using the restroom in the Space Needle. I'm standing there at the urinal doing my business, and I feel a hand reach over and pinch me on the butt. And I didn't bother to like zip up or nothing. I spun around ready to fight. Like, oh man, you know, twice in one trip, and I spin around to fight, and it's Pop. And he's just laughing. He goes, you thought you were going to get taken, did you? I was like, dude, that's not funny. And he's just like, he's like, I scared you, didn't I?
That's funny.
Yeah. He was like, you thought you was he's like, did you think he did follow us? You thought he followed us. And I was like, I just was like, I must have the most unbelievable, like worst luck on the planet to get, you know, almost kidnapped twice in one trip. Right. Like, I am not that pretty. You know, like yeah, but he just thought that was the funniest thing. He's like, I scared you. Now clean yourself up. Cause I wasn't even finished peeing. Like I'm standing there just still, you know. He's like, now clean yourself up. And then he went to go to the bathroom. I was like, man, look at this mess, man. Look at what you made me do. Yep, but that's I almost got kidnapped. You know.
Crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Twice, actually, though. Like, that really did, you know, despite the joke and everything, I almost got kidnapped when I was like 6 or 8 or something when we were living in New Mexico. I almost got taken then, too. If it hadn't been for our brother and his friend that lived down the street, I would have been. you know, but they ran up on the guy and started just like hitting him in the face with rocks. Like our brother's friend, he came running up with like this big old freaking rock, man, and baseball threw that thing right into the dude's face, and he took off. He jumped. It's gonna sound real cliche, but he jumped in the van and took off.
Damn it, man.
Yeah, yeah. He had magazines, like they were called highlights, and the highlight magazines were cool when I was growing up, right? Because we didn't have like internet and phones, and you know what I mean. You actually like had to read and do things for like entertainment, you know. And highlight magazine was really cool because it gave you a lot of like interesting facts about the natural world, like how koalas, you know, exist and what a koala bear is, type of stuff. You know what I mean? Just type of things like that, you know. This week, a sloth, you know, whatever. And this dude was in a van and he had some highlight magazines and he was showing me them. And I was standing on our yard and he was parked on our road, like dirt road. And he was like, yeah, he's like, I don't want them. Do you want them? And I said, yeah. And I walked over to take it and he grabbed me by the wrist. And he started to pull me in the van. And I remember grabbing a hold of underneath the van because it was one of those vans where you had like a little step to step up into it. I remember I was so little that when he pulled me up off my feet, I was able to wrap my arm around that step and both of my legs and hold on for dear life. And then I started screaming.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, like I screamed so loud, like I screamed like the Banshees in Ireland were proud of that scream. They were like the prophesied one. You know what I mean? Like, and he was going to hit me too. Because I looked up at him just screaming and he had his hand up like he was going to just slap the daylights out of me. And our brother and his buddy came hauling down the road like, what's going on? And they saw what was going on. And I remember our brother's friend picking up this big old rock off the road and just being like, you motherfucker. And then just boom, baseball threw that thing right into his face. And when that happened, he like screamed. He was like, oh, you know, and let go of my arm and fell back into the van. And then he jumped into the seat and drove off. And like when he did that, when he let go of me, I let go of the deal. And our brother just ran over and grabbed me real quick and pulled me away and took off. And I remember it was the funniest thing because he was supposed to be watching me. We were the only ones home. And he just let me play in the yard while he went down the street to hang with his homie. He grabbed me and he said, "Now don't tell mom."
Nice.
And I was like, "Okay, what was that? Why was he?" You know, and our brother was just like, "Because there are a lot of sick mother," you know, and he used a few words to describe certain kinds of people,
right?
You know. But yeah, mother effing, you know, and out there, he's like, and then he's like, and what were you doing trying to, you know, get in his van? And I was like, I wasn't. He was gonna give me magazines, and he's like, don't be stupid. He's like, there ain't no such thing as free in this world. Like, all right. He's like, don't do that again. Yep. Remember him like just kind of like yelling at me about the whole thing, and then his buddy is just like, dude, are you okay though? Like, he's like, that was some real you know, like, dude, your brother almost just got kidnapped, bro. You know? Yeah, that was scary. That was scary. That one scared. Yeah, that one actually, when I think back on that one still kind of scares me way more than the whole when I was 15 and freaking Grimace thought he was gonna take me, because I was like, oh dude, I'm gonna palm strike this dude in his nose and just kill him. I think if he's really about to do what I think he's about to try and do, yeah.
Oh, base. Yeah. Like, I get it.
Yeah, I'm like, if he's about to try and do what I think he's about to try and do, I'm going to put my back against the wall and just palm strike him real quick and just kill him, because I don't think this dude's going to see it coming. Like, he is bigger than me, so he's got a little bit more body weight, but he's definitely going to be slower because he's not in shape. You know, his whole plan is to just try and overpower me as quickly as possible. So if I strike him fast, and I was boxing at that time, so you know what I mean. I had a little bit of mobility to me and stuff. So I was not going to go down without a fight. You know, figuratively and metaphorically. Or not literally or metaphorically. I mean, you know, there would be no going down for me type of thing. But when that happened to me in New Mexico, man, I remember. And what's funny is that, like, when you're a little kid, you don't think about it a whole lot. And, like, by the end of that week, I had completely forgotten about the whole thing. Like, it just became like this little thing that it's like, yeah, that happened. You know, when you're little like that, it doesn't seem to stick with you, and then like later on in life something happens and it all comes flashing back to you, and you're like, man, I am lucky. I am lucky, because that could have been the end of it all. You know? Well, what do you think? You think this is about the time to close this thing out?
Um, Perhaps so. I think I've kind of talked my points, for the most part
Yeah,
this time around.
somehow we went from vampires to almost getting kidnapped. We did not talk about what we originally began talking about before we hit record on this, though, about the Holy Roman Empire and Texas and the parallels there.
Right.
But I feel like we would have just been reiterating what we had already talked about, and so there wouldn't have been as much. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
But
essentially.
I feel like we should do more research on it and see, and then come back with an informed opinion about the matter, and then do a video on it.
Right.
You know, like an actual, like, real in-depth look at it and see if there's something to the fact that there's only, and I will throw this back out there is only a 30-year gap there between the fall of the Holy Roman Empire to General Houston creating the Republic of Texas. And when you think about that the Holy Roman Empire was being ran by Charlemagne at that time. Right? So that means that Charlemagne and Houston, General Houston, both were alive at the same time. At some point in their life.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just a little interesting factoid about history and the way it works, you know? Because you're talking about like completely two different kinds of like aesthetics and society, you know?
Right.
Like Charlemagne was still kind of doing it up like knights and Satyrian. Well, like, was it really Roman-esque aesthetic that Charlemagne was doing? Like, or, you know, I'm gonna have to research Charlemagne a little bit better, I think.
Yeah.
Just to see like
that whole situation.
Yeah, just to see what the aesthetic really is. Was it real Greco-Roman still, or was it, you know, or had it evolved into
Right.
more, because I know who Charlemagne is and I have an understanding of him. I guess I just need to, I've just never really looked into what his whole vibe was, I guess. But I mean, we know what Houston's vibe was because you have the Alamo at that time. You know, the fall of the Alamo. Remember the Alamo? That was taking place during the time of the Holy Roman Empire. Well, not during the time of the Holy Roman Empire, but that happened some odd 30 years after the fall of the Roman Empire. So I feel like there's a shift there in that aesthetic, Davy Crockett, Boone, Daniel Boone, General Houston, all them guys, these famous mountain men, these famous American generals, cannons, muskets, all that stuff. And then just 30 years prior, you had things like Charlemagne and the Holy Roman Empire. I mean, it's only 30 years, man. That's like a drop in the bucket. So I'm just curious as to like how much the technology differs from each other, I guess, is really what I'm curious about. Like how much difference between Charlemagne's military and his technology invested into his military, how much that differs from, like, say, what was going on in the Republic of Texas when the battle for it took place, Because I know that they purchased Louisiana from Napoleon.
Right.
And the Battle of Waterloo was fought with muskets and cannons and things like that. So, I mean, did Charlemagne have something similar going on, or was he still rocking the old medieval, you know what I mean? We're on horses, we've got spears, we've got bows and arrows, you know what I mean? Do the ballistas, the trebuchets type of thing, like.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. I'm really curious about that. I really am. Because when I think of Charlemagne, I think of like old medieval type thing, but I could be just way out of depth. So yeah, I think that's what we ought to do. Like research that a little bit more and see if there's a connection there, kind of like what we did with Putin and Rasputin and all of that stuff. And Vlad the Impaler and things like that, like how we just kind of sat down and started drawing those connections. I think it'd be interesting to see if there is a genuine connection there, or if it's just a crazy thing in history that exists. But all right, I'm going to close this out. And we'll catch you on the next Mad Banter.